for joining us again. Tonight we have an awesome guest with us who has a lot of really awesome stories about his experience with God tonight. This is Andrew Pruett. Yes, everybody. Hey, all right. The crowd goes wild, yes.
That's my job.
That's Tara's job, yes. So thank you for joining us. Like I said, we have a guest here who has a very interesting story. Every story we have on here is very unique. And once again, from the amount I've heard from you, this is also a set of very unique experiences with God and stories about how you got from point A to point B with God in your life. And I think that's what the people at home tune in to hear. And that's what I love hearing about. There's nothing more beautiful than people's experiences with God. So thanks for joining us. And people will get to know you very well by the end of this, I'm sure. Before we get into that, though, a couple of announcements. I'm supposed to announce, we've discussed this a little bit the last couple weeks. There is a mass baptism that's going to happen. It's actually a big event in Peterson, Minnesota, right?
Well, there's
Meet
more.
at the
There's
water,
like a,
right?
well, I think there's more to it,
Yeah.
but you know, you're supposed to talk
It's
about
a
that
big-
at the end of the show,
I'll
but I have
talk
time to
about
look it
more
up.
at the end. So stick with us till the end, and we'll get you more details. Tara's going to pull those up, and then there's also a panel discussion happening next week. We'll give you more details at the end, so hang in for that. So, Mr. Pruett, how are you?
I'm very good.
So you know, we always start out by asking our guests to introduce themselves, and tonight will be no different. Do you mind letting the people know who you are? Or?
Sure. My name is Andrew Pruett, and I was born and raised in Rochester. I've been to all 50 states. I've traveled the world, roughly 27 different countries, I think.
Is that it? Still working on that now.
Still working. There'll be more,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I think God has been with me through everything. My faith, though it ebbs and wanes, you know, I've had my doubts, but I've always come back around, and it's been probably the biggest part of my life.
Yeah, and from what I've heard from you, that's probably the most interesting part of the story is the variety of different experiences you've had, both in very difficult seasons and in really awesome seasons, and then in very miraculous ways, frankly. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, where there are these times where you're like, where is God? And other times where you're like, God was there, and then you're like, there was a miracle. There was a guardian angel that kept me alive, and that is one of the things we'll be hearing about tonight, by the way. So make sure you stick with us. So you have a pretty vast background too, and as far as what you do. I mean, you're a published author, first of all. By the way, I want to actually show people this, if that's okay right now.
Absolutely.
So Andrew, during COVID, actually, this was a COVID project, which is awesome. I wish I would have written a book during that time. That is a good way to pass the time. But he wrote a book, Shaped by Water, which is his experiences with water. There was actually a book writing contest that he entered, and the topic had to be water some way. So these are his experiences with water, and he actually won the contest. So definitely a book to check out. It's a lot of really awesome stories, and we'll actually put instructions on how to order this book if you're interested. So, but we're going to hear some very personal things tonight. So yeah, you know, we know a little bit about you. What is your background other than author? I mean, you've done some other things too, I guess.
Well,
right?
I grew up in Rochester, and I was involved with Boy Scouts as a child.
And you still are. As an adult leader.
Well, it's one of those things that came back around, right? I was in Scouts. I got my Eagle.
Yeah.
I joined the military, where I taught combat survival, evasion, resistance.
Air Force, is that what?
Yeah, in the Air Force.
Yep.
And then while I was there, I worked a little bit with Scouts too. When I got out of the military, I did listen to my parents. My dad said, "Go get a job," and he said, "The economy's never been this good."
Who has a child that's done that? Yeah, I think everyone. Yeah.
So of course, I decided to go to school instead, and didn't listen to him, and regretted it. So I learned a lot going to school. It was great. I got my degree in political science and communication studies, and then went on to get my teaching licensure in social studies education.
Yeah, interesting.
Had some very interesting experiences in college as an adult learner, you know, with kids. I got in big trouble with the college administration because they I was a community advisor, and my job was to help the community, in this dorm, and then I became the senior community advisor, and one of the things they said is, well, we don't want anybody drinking in the dorm, and so then I caught everybody, and I literally caught everybody.
That's funny.
And I had to meet with the dean because apparently there are rules for how you can and can't go about preventing people. And I violated those rules.
There was some shady underground work going on.
So anyway, so I got talked to by the deans, I got talked to by the lawyer. But I got paid to go to school, all the way through school.
Wow.
So I graduated with no debt.
Wow.
Lots of things happened. I went to Europe. I taught in London for a year, where I had this really awesome opportunity to teach religion. And in England, they have a requirement that you have to learn about religion. Well, it used to be just Anglicanism, right? But now, or at least when I was there, it was Catholicism, Baptist, Protestantism, Anglicanism, Catholicism, Hinduism, Sikhism, Judaism, atheism, and Islam, both Sunni and Shia. And one of my stories that I don't know if we're planning on talking about this one tonight, but I had they asked me to teach religion because all the other teachers were atheists.
Oh my
And I was the only believer.
Wow.
And they didn't want to have anything to do with it. So the school was primarily students from war-torn countries whose families were seeking asylum.
Yeah.
And so there was all these special rules, because if the kids did anything to violate the chances of the family getting asylum, you take somebody from a war-torn country who's only, they grew up with violence, they may have killed people, whatever, their first response to any problem is violence.
Right, yeah.
And anyway, so the class was like 60% Muslim, and the rest was Hindu and Sikh.
Wow.
And this really complex stuff about how their education system is great. But I had, at one point, all the Muslims in the room, when I was teaching about Judaism, stood up, and I introduced Judaism, and then they stood up and started chanting Allah Akbar, death to the Jews.
Wow,
I was like,
that's
whoa.
crazy.
But you know what? I connected with those kids, and I talked them down, and the way I did it, I said, hey, we've been having this class for months now, and that I am a believer, I am a Christian, and I have been clear and honest with you about my belief structure, so that you know where I stand, and we can talk about these other religions, and you can learn something. You can ask all your questions, and we will have a discussion. And man, that was the hardest hitting class I have ever had. The relationships I built with those kids in that moment were some of the strongest for educational purposes that I ever had, and I had the opportunity to really share my faith with a group of people who had look at the world today. The challenges of proselytizing in Islamic countries,
right?
And then the challenges that we face even talking to people of different faiths.
Right.
And
absolutely.
They asked me to do it.
Very unique experience. Very unique.
So yeah.
And you'll be sharing about another experience you had in London too, where God showed up, and we'll be discussing that in a moment too. And that did strike me about like your varied background. You have a lot of different roles you filled, and then ended up working. What was it, in research? You said too. How
did this career path go? So I was teaching, and we don't pay teachers very much.
Yeah.
And I was really, money is important. You've got to have money to live, right? And the things that I wanted to do in my life, I really couldn't afford on a teacher's salary. And my brain is always working. I'm always thinking. And my family was in healthcare, and I decided I wanted to be in Rochester because my family was in Rochester. So then I got a job at Mayo.
Okay.
I started off in phlebotomy. I went to research, and then I got my academic appointment at Mayo to teach, and I taught phlebotomy after, so this education is a big part of my life too.
Yeah.
And then I retired in February.
Wow.
At the age of 49.
Quite an arc. Quite an arc there.
Yeah,
So, and during this time, you had some really interesting experiences too. I mean, yeah, you had a lot of professional experience, obviously, and in some very unique ways, but also spiritually. I mean, so as a Christian, I mean, so you've been a Christian your whole life, or did you become a Christian later on? Were you raised in a Christian family?
I was, so that's complicated because families are complicated. And I was born into the First Presbyterian Church in Rochester.
Okay.
And my heart was really with that church. So I went to that. My parents brought me there. I remember, all of the goings on. And there was kind of a schism that happened, or there was a big split in the church. And during that happening, my dad kind of dropped out of going to church. And for some reason, my parents decided that they would ask my brother and I whether or not we wanted to go to church. My brother was many years younger, or a couple years younger than me. He said no, I said yes. My mom took me to church every Sunday, and I really didn't like Sunday school. It was not as engaging as I needed. And I was always, they played the sermons through the speakers in the church, and I was more interested in what the preacher was saying than what was happening in Sunday school. So I did get confirmed, but I ended up spending most of my time listening to the sermons, and I started sitting with my mother in church, and I'm not a good singer, but we sang together, and my mom would always ask me questions about the sermon when we were driving home.
Interesting.
And she wanted my opinion. She never told me what to think. She asked me, what did I think about this? And these conversations really developed my faith. I was thinking hard about what was said in the sermons, and actually I took it a step further in my own mind, and I would think about what the meaning is of the songs we were singing. So one of my pet peeves in church is when they decide to just do a few of the stanzas, or they cut the song short, because every song is a story. And the
one verse leads into the next sometimes.
Well, there's an arc, and when you cut pieces out, you cut out the lesson. And so I get very frustrated with that, because I follow the story. The words are super important to me, as is the music. I'm not a good musician. My choir teacher at school told me that he would pass me if I never took choir again.
I was gonna say, you wrote a book though. Maybe you write a song next. Wouldn't that be just like God, being like, no, I'm gonna have you write a song next.
Boy.
Partner with this person who knows all the notes and
I've thought
the words.
I've thought about that's one of the things too. I had to be keeping business for a while, and I actually approached a band to help me write some songs about bees. We didn't end up. We actually worked with them. We wrote some stuff, but we never published it. But so that was the beginning.
So you were raised in a Christian home then. It sounds like. I mean, which is the best way, honestly. But
it is. But it was more than that. It wasn't just a nuclear family. It was my extended family. When we would get together, my uncle was a Lutheran minister. My aunt Stacy was just amazing. We were always having these conversations about faith, and they were very natural. Nothing was forced. It was this happened, and I see God in this, and in my world, God was active all the time. Right. When I look outside, I would see, especially in the natural world, the beauty of God's creation, and I always come back to Genesis and say, God made this, and it was beautiful. He loved what He made. And recently, I've come to think that, for a long time, I thought about God as working. God is working in the world. God is and I had this kind of mental image of labor. I don't think that's the way it is.
Right.
I think God is full of joy,
I agree.
and this creation is, like fireworks. You know, it's like magic.
Yeah.
I think God is having fun.
Yeah.
I think God is playing. And I think that the beauty is no matter how bad you screw it up, God can turn it into something beautiful.
Like the platypus.
No, that's not where it is.
God's having fun and he's in a good mood.
He's in a good mood.
Those are joy. Yes.
That's joy. I find joy in a platypus too. No, I totally get. I think there are a lot of people actually that can relate to that feeling too. There's like these moments sometimes. Like I remember very clearly. I was in the Boundary Waters once, you know, with my kids actually. We went. My 2 older kids. We were up there with a group, and we got up early one morning to fish in a canoe. And I went out there with my daughter, I believe it was, and we were fishing. And there was this moment where it was so still, and the water was like glass, and there wasn't even a breeze blowing, and there was this mist just on the water, and you could feel the presence of God there. It was more than just nature. It was surrounding us. It's like you were breathing it in, and there was this moment, this epiphany that I had where I was like, God is here with us. And I can't put my finger on it. I can't describe it. It's just an overwhelming feeling that he's here with us, you know? And it makes sense. We're surrounded by his creation, and that's the most basic thing you can tell an atheist probably is everyone can feel that in some way, whether they realize it's God or not. If you get into, there are moments, I think, where God can reach anyone, you know, with his beauty, you know, and that's one way. But, oh man, I love that. That's a really good aside.
Yeah, you bring up the atheists. I've spoken to a lot of atheists. Actually, 2 of my friends, and one of my best friends is an atheist. And one of the things that every atheist that I've known, that I've had a talk with about God, has said, I wish I believed. I wish I could believe, because you've got something that I don't have. I can't have that, and I want it. And you could say it's free. God is giving it out, and I just can't believe.
And you know what it is. I mean, and I've gone through seasons of this in my life too. The questioning is, people think that in order for something to be true or real, your mind must comprehend everything about it, because they learn not to trust the deeper truths, you know. And them telling you that is a recognition that there's this hole in their being. This God-shaped hole is the way we've described it here, you know, that everyone is created with for intimacy with God. I mean, it's a recognition that I need this relationship, like with a parent, you know, and they know it's there. They just think they have to be able to think their way to God, and God's the opposite. I mean, God's like, you'll never understand me. There's no way you can fully comprehend me, you know. That's foolish to think you can, but you can know me, and it's a deeper truth, you know, in here. And I think that's where they have trouble letting go. They think that they have to be able to control God, and that's not how God operates. You know that. I know that. Like, God cannot be controlled or understood fully, but we can still know God, you know, and that's the interesting thing to try and talk to an atheist about, I think, sometimes. And there's reasoning you can do with an atheist. I mean, God is, I don't want to say there's a formula, but there are things we know about God, characteristics, you know, that you can see, feel, they do exist, you know, but you'll never be able to fully describe them, you know, to the point of satisfying someone's mind, if that's where they think God exists. So.
And I think I agree with that. And the way I talk about this when I talk to people is, you can't take the mystery out, right? You can't say, you can't, you know, paint God into a box. Right. Yeah, it's so much deeper than our capacity to fathom. Yeah. And as soon as you know, and I'll lead into my story.
Yeah.
You know, when I was 18, and my friends and I snuck out of the house, and we were going to go. There was a full moon. We were going to go to Whitewater State Park.
Of course.
And hike, because
that's
what
good place to hike.
Good place to hike.
Yeah. Yeah.
Full moons are great.
Yeah.
I opened the window to my bedroom, climbed on the bed, pulled the screen out.
Oh, you're sneaking out.
Yes, sneaking out. Yep. Snuck out. My parents were asleep. My brother was asleep. I had a 1976 full-size brown Ford pickup.
Oh, okay.
And,
Pushed it down the driveway.
Yeah, no.
No.
It was-
Started the engine. Okay.
It was in the street, and I wasn't that sneaky. I just got it and drove.
Yeah.
But anyway, I drove out. I picked up my friend Kevin, and I drove my other friend. His name was Yuan. He's Chinese. Long story there. Eventually, I went back to China with him for a whole month. But anyway, so I picked him up, and we drove out to Whitewater, and the speed limit was 55 miles an hour. My truck could not go much faster than that. It couldn't really. That was at the top of the speed that it could go. And we were driving along, and for some reason, I had this feeling that I needed to ask I said, do you guys have your seatbelts on? Because I knew for sure Kevin did not. I always had to make him wear a seatbelt because he wouldn't put it on. And oh yeah, we got our seatbelts on. Well, they did. We went down the hill and we went up the hill. Just as we got to the top, there was an unmarked construction zone.
Oh man.
And I don't know what they were doing. I never thought to figure it out. But it transitioned from blacktop to very loose gravel.
Oh man.
And right at that moment, this deer ran across
Of course.
the front.
Oh my goodness.
And it was devastating because I swerved and I could not regain control of the vehicle. And I can remember going, this way and that way, and just grabbing the wheel and spinning the wheel and spinning, and then the tires caught and we launched off the top of this hill. It was a 30% grade.
Wow.
And
okay.
And then the world turned into slow motion. Even though you're moving incredibly fast, and that vehicle went off, and I can remember it hitting, and I could feel it twist. And as we started to go over again, I looked over at my buddies, and Yuan was holding on to I guess Kevin's leg and the dashboard, and Kevin, I watched him reach over and he grabbed the handle of the door and the latch, and he pulled the latch, and I can remember the dome light coming on and the door opening, and I watched my two buddies get jettisoned out into blackness.
Wow.
Now, these were my two best friends in the whole world.
Wow.
There is nothing that can describe the feeling that you have when you think you just killed your two best friends.
Right. Yeah.
And then to have them, gone into blackness.
Yeah.
And I'm in the light. And I'm terrified. Well, there's a metaphor here also, because as this vehicle continued going end over end, I think it went 3-5 times end over end. It came to rest, and I can, the hood was, the windshield had lifted up, and the hood was right here in front of my face.
Wow.
And it could have decapitated
Yes.
me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't open my door. I couldn't get out that way. So I went out the passenger side, because that door was
Open from them.
open.
Yeah.
And I climbed out, and I started running around looking, yelling, for Kevin and Yuan, and I found Kevin laying in the field. Now, this was a cornfield that had been harvested. And when you harvest a cornfield, there are stabs everywhere.
Yes, there are.
Row
Yes.
upon row upon row.
Wow. Yeah.
He was like 130 feet from where the truck came to rest.
Wow.
And he said he couldn't move. I did, as a scout, I had learned first aid, and I did my initial assessment. I didn't roll him over because I didn't see any bleeding, and he said he couldn't move, and I was afraid that he had a broken back or neck or something. I covered him up with my Letterman's jacket, because was,
Yeah.
I was in sports and that was what I wore out there.
Sure.
And then I ran around looking for Yuan, and Yuan had landed in a stream, and this is one of the most amazing things to me, is he had landed straight up and down, like this, and if this is his body, he was, and this is, his upper body, he was right to here, so all the way up, his legs were completely under the mud, not water, mud.
Mud.
He had come
That's
straight down,
probably
Wow.
saved him.
and to me, that's a miracle.
That is a
That
miracle.
is just a miracle right there.
Because they both exited the vehicle at the same time, right? To end up that
Yes.
far apart too.
One was on one side, about 50 feet. Kevin was on the other side, like 130 feet. I'd find out later that he did not hit any of those stops. Where he landed is where he landed.
Wow.
And Yuan, so I helped pull him out of the mud. He had a laceration, a big laceration, but it was superficial.
Hmm.
And this was at a point in my life when I was kind of not sure who I was,
Yeah.
right? So I had kind of a mohawk. didn't really look like, not a big, crazy one,
Yeah.
but I'd shave the
Yeah.
sides of my head. I had some hair up here.
Yeah.
And, not the kind of person that, your traditional farmer might stop for if they were, if you were asking for help,
Right, yeah.
Or trying to wave someone down
Right,
the side of the
yeah.
road. But I was the only mobile person.
Yeah.
And, I was the captain of my cross-country team.
Were you injured at all?
I was, we'll get to that.
Okay, sorry.
I didn't know
Not
it at the
enough.
time.
Okay.
I didn't know it at the time.
So,
But I ran up that hill and it was so steep I couldn't do it without being on all fours. And I ran to the top, and I got to the top of the hill, and I looked, and I'm like, where do I go? I didn't see a farmhouse anywhere.
right.
I saw nothing, and then as far off in the distance as I could see, 2 headlights popped up.
Wow.
And I thought, that is a car on another road that will intersect the road that I'm on,
Yeah.
and I will run
Run to meet them. Yeah.
to the stop sign
Yeah.
where they will be.
Yeah.
If I hurry, I'll make it. Well, they were a long ways away. I was probably a mile from that stop sign too. So I ran,
Wow.
and it was somewhere along the line where I realized I was bleeding from my forehead. I had a cut, but it was minor. But it did cause blood to come down my face. So now I have a mohawk.
And a
blood
bloody
Covered in
face.
blood. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
What
It's
time?
night,
What
man.
time
It's
is it?
nighttime.
What time is
This
it?
is midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
In the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, and then running, of course, you're pumping sweat.
Yeah.
So it's really making
Oh
making
my
as much
goodness.
blood as it
I
possibly
can't,
can.
I can't imagine that. I can't
And
imagine
yeah,
that.
so I ran and I got to the stop sign and I waited. And the car finally approached and I started yelling, hey, there's been a car. I said, help, there's been a car accident, and they started driving away.
Oh no.
So, and I mean, they
Oh, no.
hit the gas and they were taking off, and I jumped on the hood of the car.
Wow.
Yeah, I jumped on the car.
This is really helping your case.
And I started screaming through the windshield. There's been a car accident. We need help. Please stop. Help me get a phone
Yeah.
call. And they did. They stopped.
Do you remember like who they were, how old or anything?
They were old.
Okay.
They're probably as old as I am now.
Okay. That's funny.
but and I don't know where they were going or what they were doing at
Right.
that time of night.
Yeah.
You were kind of frightening.
Yeah, a little
I was a
frightening.
scary guy,
Yeah.
But they stopped, they let me in, they took me to a farmer's house, they had a rotary phone, everybody.
Before cell phones.
This is
Yeah.
1993.
Okay.
And,
I was guessing 94.
Yep,
Yeah.
and I called, they drove me back to the accident site.
Mhm.
The ambulance took over an hour to get there.
Oh man. Oh.
Yep, so the ambulance
Oh.
got there, they had to,
Wow.
kind of rough land evacuation to haul my buddies
Mhm.
up and into the ambulance. We got to the ambulance and it was like an hour ride back to the Mayo Clinic. And before they did the big remodel and everything, so I remember vividly the emergency room with just the you know, the drapes that they put around, and I had the Jerusalem cross on the neck. That's what I wore. I always wore that necklace with me. And I can remember just praying through this whole thing, you know, with that necklace, and I had this deep imprint in my hand, you know, this whole time, because I was holding on to it so much. And I was praying that my buddies were okay, especially Kevin.
Right.
I was really worried about him. They took us through X-rays. I found out that I had a broken neck.
They're like, you ran how far with a broken neck?
Well, what they told me was that my muscles contracted so strongly that I pulled a chunk of my neck out with my muscles. Right?
Wow.
So I don't know if that's whiplash or what. I don't know if I'm remembering exactly the right.
Interesting.
What they told me. I was very frightened.
Yeah.
I had no thought of myself this entire time.
Yeah.
I was only thinking of my friends.
Right.
And you know, I remember everybody's parents showed up, and you know, unfortunately, what I remember about my father was just him, you know, very upset.
Wow.
You know, and very angry. And I had snuck out. So I've never done anything like this before in my life.
Yeah.
You know, and I totaled the vehicle. You know, and so just a lot of issues there. But after they released us, I had to go back to. I had to talk to the cops, and I had to look at the vehicle and see if it could be. You know, my dad came down there. The vehicle was bent like a U.
Wow.
Right? Here's the front end, and here's the back end.
Wow.
Right? So it was complete, like the frame was bent.
Yeah.
It was wild.
Wow.
And the windshield, as I said, was lifted up. Well, this is one of the reasons that I believe, you know, is I feel like I was protected by my guardian angel throughout this, because, not just because of this, but there were 3 imprints on the windshield where it looked like 3 heads had hit. And none of us hit our heads. I had a cut, so yes, something happened, but I had no impact trauma.
Right.
I had no blunt force trauma to my body. You know, the seatbelt held me. I did not get decapitated, and my head did not punch the windshield.
Right.
I do not remember
There
that.
were no airbags in that vehicle. That's was well before airbags.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was clear as day that there were 3 impacts, and I felt like my guardian angel had protected us.
Yeah.
You know, in that, all 3 of us, you know, in that,
Wow.
that we were supposed to have hit our heads without the intervention of God. And that came to me on my own. Nobody said that. Nobody talked to me about that. You know, my parents, nobody. And then when I asked for a copy of the police report, the police officer had written across it, act of God.
Really? Interesting.
The accident was an act of God.
God.
But how I interpreted it was, we were saved by an act
of God. Yeah.
And that's still how I interpret it, you know. To me, that's not explainable. If the vehicle had flipped one more time, which it probably should have, I would have been upside down on a barbed wire fence in a creek. And I probably would have died. If my buddy had landed any other way, you know, who knows what would have happened? And how do you land straight up and down? I mean, come on. That's not the way a body falls, right? You spin. You know, you spin. He landed straight up and down on his feet.
Acrobatics.
And he landed in a soft spot.
Yeah,
where he
mud.
sunk like
like
4 feet up. You know,
it's like an angel went and just dropped him.
Yeah, that just
Does
doesn't
he
happen.
remember anything about that? Like how he landed there or anything? Or did you have a chance to
no,
talk to him
neither
about
one of them remember what happened.
Interesting.
They don't recall. Kevin had some internal bruising of his internal organs, but again, tell me how he didn't roll over a bunch of stops and just ruin his body.
Right, yes.
You know, he didn't. He didn't. He fell in between the rows and stayed there.
doesn't
At
make sense.
55 miles an hour,
You're
130
moving.
feet.
Yeah, you
no
don't
way.
just stop.
There's no way.
Unless
you know.
something drops you
So
like that.
I feel like, the hand of God was here laying us all to rest in
These
safe places.
Yeah,
You know?
with destruction all around.
Well, with
that's
consequences, right? Serious consequences
Mhm.
to us, but not consequences that ruined our life.
crazy. Right,
Consequences that taught a lesson,
yeah.
And the other thing that I remember from that is the police were trying to find a reason, to charge me with something. They were trying. They took everything apart, and what they found was my Eagle Scout project. They found my Eagle Scout project.
Wow.
And it was, I had it behind the seat,
Wow.
and that's when they stopped asking questions about,
Wow.
were you drinking, were you drugs,
Right.
on drugs, were you
Yeah.
high, had you done why,
Like I just wanted to go for a hike.
Yeah.
It was a full moon. We'd never done anything crazy.
Yeah.
We wanted to have an
Still
adventure,
hiking, yeah.
and so we
Interesting.
did. And
Oh,
it was
man.
not the lesson.
Uh-huh.
God was teaching a lesson. You shouldn't do that.
Yeah, no
You
kidding.
don't need to sneak out of your house
Yeah.
to have an adventure in the middle of the night. You don't have to cut your parents out.
Oh, man. Interesting.
You should wear your seatbelt.
Yeah.
I'll have a story for you later.
There's just so many layers to this, and so that's one of the many reasons.
Interesting thing with an experience like that is all these years later, you can look back at it and it hasn't changed at all. Like your experience, it needs washing anyway, so. But the show gets something for that. So, but the interesting thing with that is God will keep revealing things about it too. I mean, or He'll bring things back to your memory when you need to remember it. That's kind of the.
And now you won't forget me because I just.
Oh.
Yeah, no. See, so everyone remember that. And what's his book? Shaped by Water. Okay, yeah. We promise this wasn't planned. But well done, good marketing. Okay,
Yeah, good
job.
work. Perfect. Well done.
No. We're joking about that. Anyways, so you were telling me a little bit about that story. I mean, just briefly, I didn't hear all those details, and man, what an incredible story. Absolutely, yes. And there's people at home that might be going, oh, what do you mean guardian angel? What do you define a guardian angel as, would you say?
Well, nobody's asked me that question before.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just when you think about it, it doesn't have to be a theological answer, just like,
There's no wrong answer.
there's no wrong answer here, just
Well,
like
what I mean is, I feel like God acts in the world in different ways, and one of those ways is through angels.
Mhm.
And in that moment, I felt that that's just what it was. That's how I answered the question to
Right.
myself.
Yeah.
How did I survive this? How did my friends survive this? And the answer that came to me, and I think this is sort of the way God speaks to us, maybe just to me, I don't know, but is just through this clear thought.
Yep.
And that
a knowing that happens.
yeah, a knowing.
Yep.
And that clear thought was my guardian angel.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
It
So
could be
my
the Holy Spirit right there, yeah.
my definition is that was the answer to my
Yep.
question of how did I survive?
It's a good answer, honestly.
Yeah.
Did your two friends have the same epiphany, do you think, or are they just like, oh, we got lucky? Are they Christian?
No,
Or-
they're not.
Interesting.
We never talked about it again after that. I think it was traumatic to each of us in a
Yep.
different way,
Yep.
and the consequences to me were, especially in my family life, were significant. I couldn't wrestle after that. I loved wrestling. I had to wear a neck brace. I think it was like 6 weeks, something like that. My buddy Kevin was out of school for a while.
Sure.
And it was my fault. Yuan's parents were very strict at academics and do the right thing and that kind of stuff. And he we just dealt with it quietly, I think. So no, and I don't know. Kevin and I talked a lot about matters of faith, but he never saw things the way I did.
Interesting.
And I find that challenging because I almost feel like I lost a friend because I believed and he didn't. And I talked a lot about why I believed because years later, when Facebook happened,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
and I connected with him again over Facebook, I tried to connect, as friends again, and he even messaged me one time and said, hey, I saw you walking down the street the other day, and I messaged him back, and he never said a word to me again,
Oh, so he was in the same city even?
Yeah, it was where my wife Joanna was living when we met, so it wasn't Rochester, but yeah, so, and he saw me there, and he could have said hi, he didn't.
Yeah.
And then I connected with his mother years after that, and I said something like, God is great, it's amazing to see you again, or to hear from you again. And she got very angry with me about God, and God had done all these terrible things to her, and she could not believe because she had believed, and then all these terrible things happened, and her life was ruined, and she blamed God.
Interesting.
So, and then we didn't talk again after that. So
It's interesting that you just mentioned that. Last week we had a short message on Job,
Well,
and it's like, or just the theme of, when things go wrong. It's interesting how people who barely believe in God will blame God still, wholeheartedly. When things go right, oh, it wasn't God. When things go wrong, it's God. God did this to me. And they totally don't know God then, is what that tells me. They don't understand who God is, that God is bigger than that, and that's not the way he operates. But it is interesting. But, God isn't done with them either. I just have this feeling like this is a seed that was planted a long time ago, and there may be a moment in their life, maybe it might be when they're drawing their final breath, when they have a realization. We don't know what God can do with that, but very clearly they had an encounter with God in that moment, and so it's kind of one of those things. Don't give up on them either, but it is like, why couldn't they just have the same experience and be on the same path as me, so we could at least each discuss this or something, that's gotta be the tough part, but.
Well, I think people struggle with belief in our world today in part because they feel that we have so many answers, and we do. I think we do have a lot of answers. And those answers blow my mind. Like, you can't have what we have and the understanding that we have without the brain in your head, and we don't know how that works. The complexity of the tool that you're using to understand the world is so complicated that the best minds in the world, the best scientific, technologically, advanced civilization that's ever existed as far as we know, in the history of time, cannot decipher how it works. Right. And the complexity does not turn into simplicity as you drill down.
Right. More questions.
It gets more and more complicated.
Yeah.
And
just like God.
Well, think of it this way: if we could do any of the things that God did to create the world, we'd be doing it. And we can't, because we are limited. We are in the image of God. We are not God. We have desires and drives, and we have, a divine spark of some, your soul, and we long for understanding, and we long for connection. and that's what God wanted for us,
Mm-hmm.
in my mind.
Yep.
And to separate yourself from belief is to separate yourself from your Creator, and God gave us that choice because we can't, He didn't want us to be defined by this, you can only do this, you can only do that, show me something beautiful. This is my creation. I am giving it to you, and I'm going to watch what happens, and I will intervene when, where, and how I like, because this is fun.
Mm-hmm.
And the most terrible thing that can happen, God can turn into the most wonderful thing. And we have no say in that, but we have a choice.
And that's honestly what I love about God. That's one of the things that I really love about God is that choice. That's what gives it value, It really does.
Absolutely.
That's what makes us not machines. That's the beauty of humanity, is the choice. And it's just like in a marriage, you choose who you're going to marry, or it's something deeper than just knowing about someone. It's knowing God, and that's the important thing. I think I know we're all created for that. Like you're saying, I mean, literally, I believe our brains, like you're talking about, are created to know God more. And just like we can never fully comprehend God and who God is fully and how He operates, it's the same, I think, with our brain. Like you're saying, it's like we'll never fully know. No way. I mean, we can map it, and we can see where areas light up when we do certain things. There are things we'll know about it, just like with God, things will be revealed a little bit over time, but
I think that's what God wants from us.
That's what God wants.
God created us with curiosity.
Yeah.
And we should explore, and we should try.
Yeah.
We should strive.
Yeah.
We should strive. We should work hard to answer those questions, because there's value in that, and that's the purpose of our brain.
Right.
But not to exclude worship,
Right.
not to exclude the connection to our Creator, not to exclude the mystery, because God operates both within and outside the limits of our physical lives.
Exactly, yes.
And
That's the other thing I love about it. That's what's so incredible to me every time I see him do something like that. And so, I mean, you saw that, obviously, this operating outside of the laws of what we can comprehend with your experience you just told us about. There's another one, though, that I want people to hear about that you mentioned to me in your email. And you titled it, I thought this was great, The Camaro, the Curve, and the Potatoes.
Yeah.
The potatoes. So this is the next one I want people to hear. I'm very curious about this. You mind sharing that one?
I would love to share.
Okay.
So, my buddy in the military, Chad Reams, I think he's a pastor, actually.
Okay.
At this point, or last I heard. I could be wrong, but anyway, he sold me bright yellow 1976 Camaro.
All right.
And he had welded wrenches to for the windows to reel the windows up and down.
That's awesome.
Right? So
Wrenches.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So that was awesome. And he had straight piped it, which was illegal. I didn't know anything. I'm not a car guy, okay? So I didn't know this, but it was really loud. And he'd done that. He'd taken the catalytic converter off.
Okay.
So he wanted to make it loud. He wanted to go faster. So it didn't have a governor on it.
Oh no.
Well, that's part of the story. It didn't have a governor. So if it doesn't have a governor, you could go faster, right? So the speedometer ended, I want to say, at like 120 miles an hour, right? But the car would continue to accelerate, and I know this because
There where this is going?
there were no speed limits in Montana, right?
Of course, yes.
So I could get going, and then I could go faster than the speed limit. I could watch the gas gauge go down, and the car would continue to accelerate, and the gas gauge would move like this, and then I knew I hit top speed when the car felt like it was floating.
Yeah.
So it would come up off, really dumb. Like,
Speed of light.
Do
Speed of
not
light.
Do not try at home. Yes. You're not condoning
Very
this.
bad idea, especially when you're a young man
Yeah.
and you're, and you want to show off.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. Okay.
but
Yeah.
there was this guy that was in the service with me. He worked in the motor pool, and so, but he had his family was from Roxburgh, Idaho, and they had a potato farm.
Okay.
He said, "You want to earn a couple $1,000s?" I said, "Yeah." He said, let's take 2 weeks off and we'll go harvest potatoes." I said, "That sounds great." Did you know that there are potatoes that are so huge they can't be processed? I had potatoes like this big, huge potatoes.
I've never heard of that. Are you sure they weren't pumpkins?
They were potatoes.
Okay.
They were in the ground, not on top.
Okay.
They were
Underground.
potatoes.
All right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So we get to Roxburgh, Idaho, and the idea was that you work, like as many hours in a day as you could.
Yeah.
Some of these days were 20-hour days, right? They were hard. They wanted to get all their fields harvested in 24 hours. There were like a dozen semi trucks, whatever. And he just kind of dumped me out there and said, "Okay, we're gonna go." And all right. And so this lady says, "Well, you know how to drive a semi?" And I looked around, I looked inside, and I said, "Yeah." Never been in a truck like that before.
No.
And she said, "Hop in, let me show you." So I hopped in, and she took me for one run. And what they do is the tractor is going through the field and it's pulling up all these potatoes.
Okay, sure,
right?
yeah.
And the potatoes are going through this chute, and then there's a line of semi trucks, right? With big open beds or whatever, sides. And then you start at the front and you just fill. You drive at a speed when you're looking in the side mirrors and you're waiting until you see potatoes get to the top of the truck, and then you go a little faster, right? So, and then you just keep going, so everything's in motion all the time. And you're 6 inches from the tractor while you're doing this. And there's a guy that's immediately behind you because the tractor can only pause the the chute for just a couple seconds, right? Or it fills up and then it doesn't work, right? So you just want to keep going.
Yeah.
So she showed me how to shift and all this stuff, and then we filled up the trailer, and you peel off, and you're driving through like moon dust, so you're there's clouds of dust. Well, they had Chevy pickup trucks, and the Chevy pickup trucks had Corvette engines.
Okay.
And they, not me, they wanted to race.
Of course.
And so, here we're tired, we're working, and so we started racing. And if the race was short, they could win because they could accelerate faster. But they had a governor, and their engines cut out at like 110, right?
Yeah.
And so, my
Tara's coming in for you. Oh no. Yeah.
I didn't have a governor. So if the race was long, I could win.
You could.
Right?
Yeah.
So we had all these races on these gravel roads. It was terrible.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
just,
Gravel even.
Yeah.
Does your mother know?
Nope.
Oh.
Nobody knew. I'm sure I would have been in trouble with
Yeah.
my military guys, whatever. It was not, because they don't want you to break the rules. Don't break the laws, don't break the rules, don't do anything that's going to get you hurt. Your government property, if you get hurt, you are in trouble, right?
Yep.
Because you are part of this warfighting machine, and you need to be able to do what you are supposed to do. So no, nobody knew. And anyway, so she took me around. I mean, we would race in the morning, and we'd race in the evening, but then I would drive this semi-truck. And you'd come around, and they had these World War II bomb shelters, where they would put the potatoes. So they're underground.
Wow.
And you would back this semi-truck down into the ground to unload it. And you only had a couple inches on both sides. I got really, really good at backing these things up. I could have been a truck driver, I'm not so good anymore, but I had that drive, like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it well, and I do believe. I believe you should always do every job you can to the best of your ability.
I agree.
You know, I don't care whether or not you're getting paid for it.
Yep.
You do your job to the best of your ability, no matter what.
Yeah.
So I made it my mission to do this. I didn't want to have to back out and come back. I wanted one shot.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where I was doing that. And you unload, and then you go back out and over and over and over again. And then it was over. It was time to go back. And I said, you know, I want to save some money. Let's take some of these potatoes that they can't harvest. So we got these burlap bags, and we filled them with these giant potatoes. Huge potatoes. Some of these potatoes weighed like 25 pounds.
Wow.
I'm guessing, but that's what they
I'd like to see one of those.
Massive.
You're gonna go harvest potatoes.
Massive.
Wait, you were putting them in your car then?
So I filled these burlap bags, and then we filled the car with the back seat. And we picked up some tires, because he needed tires for his Jeep or something.
Okay.
I don't remember, whatever. And it was time to go. All right. Well, when you've been driving fast, all you want to do is drive fast.
Yeah.
So it was getting late. There were no cars. Well, no, I'm sorry, not yet. So we took off. We went through Idaho, and we had a group of 5 V10 Vipers.
Wow.
So we're going like 100 miles an hour, and these Vipers, boom, boom, past us like we were standing still.
Wow.
I love that car ever since I did that. It was beautiful. I mean, it was awesome. So anyway, that also made me want to drive faster. So we get into Montana, and we're going, the sun is going down, we're climbing up into the mountains. Still going fast. Not smart, right? So it was dark, and I was going over 100 miles an hour, and I remember seeing the sign flash by 30-mile-an-hour curve. And I'm like,
You don't have time to
I was, oh my God. You know, I thought, I slammed on the brakes.
Oh no.
And
The potatoes kept going?
no,
Or
well,
no?
we kept
Okay,
going.
good.
The whole car kept going.
Oh no.
You know, we're going, and I can see that we are gonna go off the cliff. And I made a decision. I am not a car guy. I don't watch the Indy 500. I don't care about car racing. Nothing. And this is another reason I believe in God, because I thought, okay, I need to turn the car hard to the left and slam on the gas. And I did. And
Yeah,
I
'cause that-
drifted around the curve. I know now what the term is. I drifted. The whole car went like this, and the back wheels were on the edge of like
This
a
cliff.
1,000-foot drop. And I remember looking at the guy in the seat next to me, and I swear he was dead.
He was so pale, or
There
what?
was nothing. There was no blood in his face. He wasn't moving. I don't think his heart was beating. But I was drifting, and I drifted around. I've never done anything like this in my life.
You are what is that race that you guys watch? The
F1.
F1, F1
I don't
driver
know
now.
how I did it, but I went around the curve. And when I got around the curve, I just came to a stop, and we just sat there. And it's another one of those things, like, we never talked about it. You know, we never talked about it. I drove home.
40 miles an hour after that.
No, I drove the speed limit. I drove the speed limit, but I didn't drive super fast anymore, because of this situation, where I felt like we could have died. That was we should have died.
Yeah.
Okay, why did I have those thoughts? Like, I've never been in that situation.
No.
I've never done anything like this before.
Wow.
Why did I think that?
Had knowledge you didn't have in your head. I
Right.
mean, it's that's interesting.
Yep, and I have not told my son this story.
Yeah. Drifting is not fun on a mountain.
Always
curve.
driven the speed limit. Always.
Always drive the speed limit. Yes.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So that's my God story.
Man.
and how did I do that? You know, I believe it's because I had faith. I believe that God intervened in my life. I still don't know why, you know, other than it's deeper than my own understanding. You know, because I don't know what I'm here to do. I don't know what I'm here to contribute. I don't know what the purpose of, you know, I can say my purpose is to raise my son and to be a good young man and contribute to the world. But what is my purpose? Like, why did I survive that? Anybody can have a kid. You know, I'm sorry. You know, I mean, yes, there's
I know what
reasons,
you're saying.
but you know,
what you're saying.
he's not the only kid in the world. There's billions of people. Like, why am I special enough for God to have done that? And the only answer I can come to is love. You know, God loves each of us, and we're each important.
It might be that simple because people often overcomplicate it. Like,
Why?
Yeah.
Why me? Why did I survive?
Well, yeah. You know, survivor skills sometimes. You know, like I'm not a good person. I don't deserve this. You know, these people were better than me. You know, when you're talking about survivor skills, things like that. You know, but.
Well, I've had those thoughts.
Absolutely.
I mean, I should have died there. I should have gone off the cliff, and both of them, I should be dead.
Other people in the same situation would have died probably, or something like that. Yeah, and it is a weird burden, you know, that I think only God can relieve a person of, because God will reveal, you know, who He truly is and what He thinks of you and who you truly are, you know, and I think that's what cures that way of thinking. You know, that's the best way.
And even as I think back, like this, I was not the best version of myself in those years. Those years, while I had faith, it was different, you know, than now. And I think what really has made me, I think we're all always a work in progress, but what has made me the best version of myself is my son. You know, because when my wife had me, or when I became a father, something fundamental changed in me, which is I suddenly wanted to be the best version of myself. And I can remember the struggles that I had in the choices that I made, you know, to quit doing things that I knew were potentially harmful to myself, but that I didn't really care because, you know, it wasn't hurting anybody else, it was me. And then, how can I be a good dad how can I be a role model to my son if I'm not the best version of myself to him? It's not fair. And then I changed.
And that's the answer to your question. I mean, really, it's why me? It might have been just to accomplish that. I mean, honestly. And I think that with time, God will reveal these things to you. Just ask God about it sometimes. I think it's that simple. I think we overcomplicate it. God, give me a revelation about what actually was going on in this moment. Where were you, God? I mean, and God will show you. And He'll, I think, sometimes give you perspective, especially over time. Like looking back now, I think it's easier sometimes once you get away from a moment like that to look back and be like, now I have a different perspective. I can see from this distance. Whereas when I was right up close to it, I couldn't see. God, where are you? What's the purpose? Why did this happen? What's going on here? What's the bigger story? I think the further you get away from it, you get perspective, you grow. And that might have been the whole point of that experience, literally. I mean, was that there was some shift or some thought that was planted in your mind that rippled through time, you know? And it still is. It's still going.
That's a beautiful picture, to ripple through time. I love that verbiage. And I think it's so true that there are things that you can't understand early in life or close to the moment that only come from seeing the reflections of that in the past coming back to you in times when you're seeking to understand. And I think you mentioned something that's key to this whole thing in this conversation, which is to ask God. And you can, and it does not mean you're going to get an answer that there's not going to be an audible voice. There's not, maybe there is, but I don't want to limit God. But if you don't ask, you'll never get an answer. And if you don't ask, you're not curious enough to learn the thing that maybe you're meant to learn. And I think that asking, being curious, Jesus says, I can't remember the exact quote, but to look at the world through the eyes of a child. And if you can do that, if you can keep that curiosity alive, and also the awe and the wonder at God's creation, you can choose joy, peace. I'm not sure about happiness. Happiness is a little more ephemeral. You can be happy in a moment, but joy is making that choice over and over and over again.
Yep.
And then realizing that no matter what you understand, it's deeper than that.
And that's actually was one of the topics of our shows like a month ago or something, was optimism. And how you can choose to be optimistic or pessimistic, and often the world will sell you a pessimistic view. Things are bad because you shouldn't expect good things because things are getting worse because, but that's not, as Christians, that's not who we are. That's not who God created us to be. We have hope, right? It's the same thing as optimism, It's a deeper knowing and a choice, really, to think a certain way about your position in the world and who God is and who you are, and a reason to have joy, optimism, hope, and it absolutely is a choice. Absolutely. Some people think, oh, things are bad and there's no way I don't have any control. Things are out of my control. No, things will happen to everyone, right? But we have a choice about how we respond,
And we're
how
given,
we think about it. Yeah.
and I want to add something to that.
Yeah.
We're also given a set of rules to follow. There are rules for us. Maybe there's rules for God, but we're not going to comprehend them. But for us, there's rules, and we can look to the Bible for guidance, to understand the rules that we are to follow, and realize that when we violate those rules, there'll be consequences, but that those consequences are given in love to change behavior that is not leading us to our best selves, and to be a child of God, and to reflect God's creation, and to allow us to choose joy.
Right.
If we ignore the rules, we will not get there.
Right. Yeah. That's a really good way to put it, actually. So, yeah. Well, I guess, there is a third story. Can we get to it, do you think?
Yeah.
Can we touch on this?
Yeah, sure.
Because, man, I'd love to talk even more about some of this stuff sometimes, and we're obviously, there's some topics we'll talk about on the next time he's here, too. There are some really interesting things. But the final one, I love the topics, or the titles you give to these. The weight of his hand was this one. And this is a different type of story that I think a lot of people need to hear. Honestly, it's a different way that God relates to us, and it's very personal. But I think it deals with a moment that a lot of people out there have probably experienced, or they know someone else who has. So, do you mind sharing that one?
I don't. I'll preface this with saying I've not shared this story publicly outside of a prayer group before, but I'm comfortable doing that. Also, if you're, this is a story of depression and potential suicide. So if that's
Trigger
something that's
warning.
going to trigger you, maybe call somebody. Seek professional help. But when I went to London, I didn't go there just to teach. I was following a woman that I loved deeply at the time, and that relationship fell apart, in part because of matters of faith, and the challenge was not met well by me, and she left me. I can remember going to the store to buy some food. In England, things are smaller.
Yeah.
Smaller refrigerators, smaller grocery stores,
That's
smaller
true.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no money in the town. So there's also a little bank on the side of the street. I went to the bank and there was no money in the bank. All the money was gone.
Oh.
And there was a lot of money in that account. And the banker, I said, where did the money go? And he said, I can't tell you. And I think you could see that we were at a crossroads here. You know, there were things written on my face that were not coming out of my mouth, that he was reading clearly. And he turned his computer screen and he said, you know, the money was transferred to India. And then it was transferred again to Dubai. And I had lost everything. Everything. In that moment, I had lost the woman that I loved. I had lost all of my resources. And I was in a foreign country. I was living between the largest Gurdwara outside of Rajasthan, India, which is a Sikh place of worship, and the largest mosque in England, which was a converted castle.
Wow.
So I had no community, I had no family, and I was alone, and I didn't know what to do. So when I don't know what to do, I usually walk, and I walk and I think, and I went for a walk through some of the worst parts of London. Again, I should have been younger. I mean, I know I walked through gangs, I walked through homeless places, I walked through groups of people doing drugs, and I walked and I walked and I walked, and my spirit sank and sank and sank. And all I could think of was, there's nothing left for me to do but die. And so I started looking for a place to make that happen. And there's a lot of trains in England, a lot of trains in London. So I walked to a bridge and went over the train tracks, and I waited for a train. Because I figured if I jumped in front of a train, that would do the trick. And so I saw the train coming, and I climbed up on the edge, and I went to jump, and I could not. I was physically restrained. I felt a hand upon my shoulder holding me down. And I could not jump. And then I collapsed on the bridge, and I started to cry. And I sobbed, and I cried like I have never cried before. I'm not a big crier. This was a big deal. And the sorrow that I felt was the deepest sorrow that I think that point in my life was maybe capable of feeling. I don't know how long I lived there. I don't know. I don't have a lot of, I don't know how I got back to my apartment. But I do know that miracles were happening around me, because while I was in London, my aunt, Stacy, had decided that she wanted to become a monk, a Christian monk. And she went to the Northumbrian Christian community in, I forget the name of it, north of England in, well, you can look it up, it's by Lindisfarne, Holy Island, this area. I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, I called my aunt why she was there, why she had come there. I mean, why was she did not become a nun.
Mhm.
She wasn't, I mean, she had her own journey, but that wasn't her purpose there. You know, for me, her purpose was to save me.
Yeah.
And I went there, and I can just remember, I mean, I remember all of this vividly, but I went there to the Northumberland community.
And we say Northumberland.
Northumberland,
Yeah.
yeah. And we had these prayer meetings. It did not happen because I cried so much. And I could not stop. The sorrow, the depth of my emotional pain was a black hole, and it just came out of me, and these people just sat there with me, strangers, but you know, friends in Christ, and spiritually they held me in this place while I was being remade, you know, and I was there for days. I went to Holy Island, went to Lindisfarne, we went to all these dilapidated churches, and I needed to think, like I was devastated.
Yeah.
So I did what I do, which is I went for a walk, and I took off down this road, and I saw a trail that went up into the woods, and I walked up into the woods, and there was a cave, and I walked into the cave, and when I got into the cave, it started to pour. I mean, really pour. And I felt like God was crying with me. It was this presence of, I was meant to cry. I needed this release, and it was okay. And I came out of the cave, and I started picking things up as I walked, and I was walking up, because one of the best things a person can do if you don't know where you are is to go to the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
And have a look around.
Yeah.
And I started walking up. They call them moors there. And I picked up a rock. It's a prayer. And I picked up a bell. And I picked up a length of line. And I picked up some wire. And I just kept walking. And I got to the top. And there was this big cairn pile. It's a big pile of rocks where people had dropped rocks for prayer. Each rock is a prayer, and you put it in the pile.
Okay.
It's a thing. And I started, and I looked over to my right, which was to the east, and I heard a sheep, and as I walked, 3 sheep left the herd and followed me. And I don't mean like close, but they followed me from half a mountain away. 3 sheep. And what came to me was Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And I was being given space to make a choice. What was I going to do in this broken moment? But God was there, and I walked, and I saw some lumber, and there was a couple of pieces of wood, and I kept going, and I got to this field. I don't know much about cows, but this herd of cows charged me in the field.
Well, that's exciting.
And they all came at me, and I felt like I was being told, don't go any further. And they were not mean, they weren't trying to trample me, but they were just all these cows, and they pushed me back. And I went back through the fence, and they all pushed on the fence, like, I was supposed to be feeding them or something.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
And which I did do. I pulled some grass and fed them. But it was like, I felt really like I'm not obscure anymore. Like, I can't walk with these sheep and a herd of cows.
Yeah.
Or you
You know.
can have some birds come land on your shoulder
Yeah.
next, some squirrels.
It was, you know, I felt like, you know, all of a sudden, like I was being watched, and I was, I mean, all these cows, but my people, and I wanted to be alone, and so I turned around, and as I walked back up the mountain, I picked up these two pieces of lumber. One was 10 feet long, one was, I guess, it was a big square, you know, like 4x4, and the other was like a 6 foot 2x4, and I carried them up the mountain.
Oh.
And I lashed them together with the belt and the wire and the twine that I picked up, and I made a cross. And I dug the cairn pile out. When I mean the cairn pile, it was probably 5 or 6 feet deep. I mean, it was huge. It was
Okay.
massive. So I dug it down a couple of feet in the center.
Yep.
And I put the cross there, and I put the rocks back up, so the cross was there. And I walked back down. And I felt better, but I didn't feel great. And I still felt lost. And when I got to the bottom, you know, I turned around and I looked. So I had been traveling east. And when I looked back, I was looking west. And right behind the cross was the setting sun, and the cross in the light, and there was one break in the clouds, and the sun was shining on the cross, and it was that picture that you dream about or see, you know, in art that,
Right.
that isn't real, and it was real.
Yeah.
It was the cross in the dark sky with a beam of light,
Right.
and at that point, I knew I would be okay in this and other situations, you know, in my life. I felt a sense of acceptance that here I had failed at something so miserably that I didn't think my life was worth living. And that was not true. I was wrong. And it was not okay to give up, to quit, but it was okay to cry, and it was okay to fail. And that was not the measure of my life. The measure of my life would be later, when I stand before God and am judged.
Yep.
And God loved me.
Yep.
And I had that feeling, and it was that day that I stopped crying, and I started rebuilding, and I have been very successful.
Yep.
But it was the deepest, darkest moment of my life, and God was there, and that hand on my shoulder, I mean, literally, I and not gentle, you know.
Yep.
I was a strong person. I mean, it was not, I mean, it was there, I could not move. I was held in place, and then I collapsed.
It was a tangible
I felt
hand.
there's that.
Yeah.
I felt
It wasn't just your mind saying, don't jump, don't jump, don't jump.
no. I was jumping. There was.
Yeah.
You had made that up.
I had decided,
Decided, yeah.
and I had made my choice, and I was given another chance. But God physically intervened in my life in what I would call a miraculous way to prevent me from jumping. And I'm not a perfect person.
It's
And so God saved me, because whatever God does, if we choose God, beauty will come of it at some point. That's what I believe now. Whatever I'm doing, there's joy. You know, God experiences joy from my life, and that's enough for me.
right. And I think the takeaway for people at home too is, you know, this was the darkest moment of your life, like you said, the darkest. And when you were saying that, I was just thinking of, you know, Psalm 23, obviously, you know, the valley of the shadow of death. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, for you are with me. You know, and it's that really interesting time when all, you know, and I think everyone at some point in their life has a dark moment like that, you know, in different ways.
Yeah.
It's unique for everybody. It's very personal for everybody. But there's a moment where it's like you can't see anything but the darkness sometimes. It feels that way. But even though that's all you see, you know, we must know that God is with us. And in that moment, he was. And you weren't even looking for God in that moment. And he was very clearly there. And not that he'll show up that way for everybody. It's different, I think. God's so personal. He knows exactly what you're going through in this moment, right now, this very moment. He knows everything that's happened to you, things that have gone wrong, you know. God knows exactly where you're at right now. And he cares. And I think that's the big takeaway. God cared, you know, in that moment. And it goes on to say, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. It's interesting. God literally redirected you. And that rod and the staff, isn't that what a shepherd used? You had sheep following you there. There are all these signs, you know, that God is with you, and 3 of them, obviously. He was making it painfully obvious that he was there. And it's so funny. That. You did. That's what he'll do.
The crook of the is actually, you know, he got
It's a crook.
He got the crook of the, you know, of the staff or whatever.
He's like, now go this way. I'm gonna send some cows to move you back this direction. Now here comes some sheep. Okay. Yep. No, it's like
they're hurting animals.
It's like, yep. Now see these things. Pick them up as you go. You know. I mean, it just reminded me of that. You know, and I think it's vital for people at home to know this too. Because we don't talk about it enough. I mean, that, yeah, as Christians, there will be difficulties. Jesus promises that. I mean, there will be difficulties. Just for being a Christian, sometimes you'll suffer difficulties, but just having the human experience, there's going to be not fun stuff that happens. So, but even in the midst of the deepest, darkest valley, God is there with you, you know? And we're not supposed to test God on those things, you know, obviously, but God cared enough, you know, in that moment, and he cares what's happening with you right now. So if you find yourself in a place like that, let this be a confirmation to you, you know, that God cares and God is there, and find God, you know, he is there, and this too shall pass is the other important thing, you know. Even though it feels like it might not, whatever you or your loved one is dealing with, it will pass. Things will get better. God does care. And looking back, you'll see him all over that moment if you seek God before anything else. So it's an incredible story, and I wish more people would share these things too. You know, that's kind of it. We're kind of weird as a society, or as men sometimes even, about sharing these things, and we need to share these things. It's vital. You know, and you know, it's interesting too. The other thing that was coming to mind when you were talking, you know, like this weight or this sorrow, it reminds me of like some of the people in the Bible that messed up or found themselves like making mistakes or things that were devastating.
Yeah.
Like Peter when he denied Jesus, right? 3 times. Like he even knew it was going to happen and he still did it, right? And the sorrow that must have come from that. I mean, oh, I can't imagine that. Like, what do you do the next day when you wake up? Like, what did I just do? How do I recover from this, you know? And literally, Jesus came to him. And God's that personal, you know? Like, I know what happened, and, you know, here's the reset.
I knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
I told you.
Here's the reset button, right? And you're going to know very clearly this is the reset button. And in Peter's case, Jesus literally shows up. I mean, literally, it's like, here, we're resetting this thing, you know? And in your case, you had a reset moment too. Let God press a reset button. Choose to let God hit that reset button is the important thing too. It's what an incredible thing. Oh, well, we obviously want to have you back again because he has a couple.
More.
There's more. There's more. But
I got more than a book.
He's got more than a book. But he actually has a lot of background knowledge about AI that we'd like to actually have an episode just dedicated to that. So be watching. You know, we'll post that just like we normally do for our guests, so you'll know when we'll maybe be talking about that, and especially the topic of morality in AI, and what that means, and questions surrounding that, and us as Christians or humans, how does that fit in to our mindset and our place in the world, I guess, right? And then we have a whole other session that we'd love to do about getting your financial affairs in order in a godly manner, and what does God say about that, and how do we put that into practice, you know, be stewards, proper stewards of what God gives us in this world, which is something I think everyone can listen to. You've gone through that whole process, so you have some firsthand accounts of that, and I think people could probably get a lot from that too. So we'll have you on hopefully a couple times here, so be watching for that. Otherwise, the couple announcements we have too before we wrap up here.
First is Disciple live in concert. Was one of the concerts?
So we have another What concert coming up at Wyckoff Commons. And it is Disciple, they're called. And it's a band. Friday, July 31st. July 31st.
7 o'clock. Doors open at 6:30. Free admission.
Free admission. So another free What concert. July 31st. Doors open at 6:30. Concert starts at 7.
I also saw that she had posted Seventh Day Slumber is in Pine Island tomorrow.
Hey, I was actually wearing their shirt that I got at their other What concert. I was just wearing that yesterday. If you haven't seen Seventh Day Slumber, catch them in Pine Island.
They have pyrotechnics, even at the small concerts.
Yeah, we were, just an aside for that, I love that concert. That's probably one of my favorite What concerts they did. It was in a gym at the Wyckoff Commons. If you've been there, it's an old school gym basically. And they had pyrotechnics in there that almost took my eyebrows off, and I wasn't that close. And I was like, whoa, you can feel the heat coming from the stage. I thought it was awesome, okay? And I had my boys with me there too, they enjoyed it. So they put on a great show, great band, great music. You get to meet them afterwards. Wonderful, go see them too in Pine Island. And then meet me at the water.
Yep, Meet Me in the Water, Minnesota Revival. It is Saturday, August 29th. And Sunday, August 30th, at 87 Centennial Street, Peterson. Says River Baptisms, Preaching, Worship Band, Food Truck, everything is free.
So again, a free event as Christians seeking revival.
Go check it out.
And an awesome experience. If you want to get baptized or know someone else who does, what better time or place to do that? Right in Peterson, right? Right in Peterson.
Posted both of those on our Facebook pages.
They're both posted on our Facebook pages, and then the other thing.
And share them with your friends.
Please like and share them with friends. And then the other thing is we have a panel discussion coming up. This is one you do not want to miss. A lot of these people have been on our show here. We're bringing them all together in one place at the same time, and we're going to be asking some really hard-hitting questions.
Do you want me to tell you who the speakers are?
Yeah, so we've got Mark Hendrickson from Kansas City. We've got Rod and Connie Marquette, who've been on the show before. Les Holman, obviously, who's been on the show a number of times.
Jeff and Grace Rasmussen.
Mr. Bartlett, what's his first
name?
Stephen Bartlett. We have not had him on the show yet, but he is awesome. You will love seeing him. And is Jeff going to be?
Yes,
Jeff Rasmussen and Grace Rasmussen. Angie Rodenberg will be on there.
They've all been on the show as well.
They've all been on the show as well.
The only one who
and I'll actually be there moderating as well. And what we're going to do is actually we'll live stream it and then post it also on our YouTube page and Facebook, so you can catch that. But that's going to be Monday,
July
27th.
Yep, at 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
And it's called Generational Legacy Panel Meeting.
Yep, Generational Legacy Panel Meeting.
And that is also posted on our Facebook page.
That's also posted, in case you couldn't hear her talking here. So posted on our Facebook page. Check out our Facebook page for all that information. A lot going on as Christians here. If you're bored and you're a Christian, you have a lot of ways to get plugged in and not be bored. Make that choice today. Please plug in, impact the world around you. So we usually have our guests end with a prayer or final thought or declaration. Do you mind closing us?
Yeah, sure. That's
right.
Yep. Dear Lord, please be with each and every one of us and all those who are listening. Help us choose joy find peace and bless one another. In the name of Jesus Christ our Lord we pray. Amen.
Yeah, amen. Thanks for joining us. Have a blessed week.